All right. Several new faces, including myself. I am Drew Rubidge, and I will be the moderator for DIG. I work for the Smithsonian Institute, the National Museum of American History, and my job title specifically is museum specialist. So I'll be here moderating the panel today. We have 6 people here in front of us from all different backgrounds, and they're going to share their experiences. I'll ask them a couple of questions, and then I'll turn it over to you, the audience, to open the floor up for questioning. So you can ask them about their experiences, how they climbed the career ladder, anything you really want related to their job experience. So let's do a quick introduction, and then in the interest of time, we'll get on with the panel. So we have Sasha Klein here first. He works at Booz Allen Hamilton. He's a consultant. And then we have John Sloan, who just presented this afternoon. And then next to him we have John Michener, also presented this afternoon. And then next to him we have Vanessa, and her last name is Tesoriero. And she is the director of Congressional Affairs at the Office of Legislative and Congressional Affairs in the Department of Education. And more information about the individuals themselves can be found in the brochure. So welcome to our panelists that I just named. And then next up, we have Teresa Shea Booker, the program analyst here at the NIH. And then at the very end, we have Tim Wheels. He's the executive officer and director of management here at NIH, at specifically the National Institute for Deaf and Other Communication Disorders, NIDCD. So welcome to you too. Okay, so the first question to get us started today. To open us up, I wanted to ask you, what was the most beneficial resource, or I guess people, or what helped you climb the career ladder? What benefited you the most? Did you all see my question?
Do you want me to start? Okay. Should I stay seated? Should I stand? I'll stand.
Why don't you stand? Can everyone see him okay?
My name is Sasha, and I work at Booz Allen Hamilton. I'm a consultant. It's a large consulting firm headquartered in Virginia. My office is actually in Rockville, Maryland. So the question that you asked, what tool did I find most beneficial in my career growth? Without discussion, it would be technology. I used great technology from day one: instant messaging, email, and basically a human resource, interpreting. Those are the most important tools that I've used in my professional life. A lot of my work depends on email and instant messaging, Virginia Relay, or the Relay service as well. It's hard to do what I do today without that technology. It requires a lot of phone meetings with my clients. Some of them live in different states. Some team members are in other states, and I use it more now than I did before because I work remotely. And for a deaf person like me, it's tops. It's the best. I need those. I can participate in those face-to-face meetings, and I depend on written communication, and I have to, as opposed to verbal communication. So the technology we have is way better now than it was even 10 years ago. So I would say that that's been an important resource for me. Thanks.
Who's next?
I will have to agree. Definitely technology. Is that? Oh, and okay. Okay, I could say some more. I could go on, I guess. I didn't plan to, but I'll just reiterate. I think everybody would agree that technology has been an amazing tool, that it has helped enable, remove the communication barriers. I know we talked about communication, and yes, we still have a long way to go in certain areas, but we've made huge leaps compared to where we were in the past. I think that I may have been part of the last class of students at Gallaudet, maybe that graduated in 2003, that actually handed in paper assignments on paper that I actually hand wrote, 20 pages of handwritten work that I turned in. And she said, "Do you usually write all of your work?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "You know what, next time you need to type this." And I realized that everybody had typed it. I was probably the last person to do that. I missed out on technology. It came from a small rural town in Kentucky. So in the short time that I was here, I didn't realize the advancements with technology. And because of it, I was able to advance like I did. And I'm sure there's going to be more in years to come.
Not only tools, but education or training. Any of that benefit you over the years?
Absolutely. You mentioned education. It's not just education's not only good for helping you, get advancements in your career, but the degree, what you studied, shows that it basically builds your credibility. That depending on whatever field that you decide to work in, but the training and education is definitely key. Continual training, getting certificates. And I said I'm a certified financial manager, and it requires certain 2 years of training. And there's a lot of areas of specialty within my line of work, and so you have to keep up with the training and update your skills and your knowledge and know what's coming down the road. If you aren't aware of what's up and coming and the changes that are coming in your field, you're going to get sucker punched and not be able to keep up. And so you need to make sure that you stay on top of the resources that you need to keep track of the changes that are coming. You can't just be looking at what's happening today. You've got to look forward too.
Great, thank you. John? I'd like to expand on his point about education that he just mentioned. My recommendation is to become familiar with different agencies like RID, the Registry of Interpreters for the Deaf. That's one organization. And I can give you an example of what I mean by that. So the cost of interpreters, the concerns about cost for interpreters has come up before. And some people will say, why do you need 2 interpreters? Often you see 2 interpreters working. I think 1 should be enough. The job shouldn't be that hard for 1 to do. But they don't really understand how it works, so you need to educate them. The people that say this say, you really do need 2 interpreters, because they just don't know why. So use tools like RID, resources like RID, because they have a position paper on why to use team interpreters. So you can show them RID's website, and you're obviously not becoming the subject matter expert on it, but in a way, you're the person who has access to that resource. Because you're a deaf person, you're the one who has that base knowledge. And like I said, you're not the expert, but it's a way of enlightening them of the fact. And so if you say we need a team interpreter, 2 interpreters, because for 2 hours an interpreter can get carpal tunnel or repetitive motion injury for doing that work by themselves. It's a way of giving them access to that resource. You shift the burden to RID and no longer on yourself. Same thing with VRS, video relay services. Sometimes some workplaces won't allow VRS services there for security reasons. And I wish I had an answer for that, but it depends on the agency. They have their policies. So once you know the different recommendations or the different solutions that they provide there, you can use interpreters or VRS, then you can make time to discuss which solution you're going to use. And then you can also use that time to introduce a new concept. Like maybe you could say, we've used this solution before. And then that's a way of educating them about other opportunities. And that may lead you to success more likely as well. I even wish I could tell you this one-size-fits-all concept could apply, but it doesn't. There is no one-size-fits-all. Life is never one-size-fits-all. It varies, and it's very different. And idioms, for example. I can give you an idiom. I use a lot of idioms when I talk. And I've noticed that being direct or blunt isn't always the best way to get your message across. So I use idioms. For example, my favorite idiom to use is the fox guards the hen house. And typically I'll use that when I'm talking about EEO. Because you'll notice that a lot of times interpreting services under EEO offices. That's where it's housed. So an EEO office, they'll somewhat understand disability needs and the needs of people with disabilities, but the problem is that the EEO purpose is to mitigate the legal violations that occur in the workplace. So if they're also responsible for enforcing the interpreter provision of service, I think that's in conflict of interest. And you who are lawyers probably know more about that than I do, but again, like I said, I'm not a lawyer. So it's about educating, and it's important to know your stuff and be able to provide the right information and resources in hopes that you can convince whoever you're trying to that you'll lead to a solution and find an effective way to advance your career.
Right, you mentioned one size fits all, and I agree with that. I thank you for the different ways that you shared that helped you advance your career. Vanessa?
Would you rather I stand or sit? I guess I'll stand. Okay. Hello, I'm Vanessa, And I do work now in the Office of Legislative and Congressional Affairs in the Department of Education. And I'd like to add and agree to what they've all said, but I would say that really one of the most beneficial qualifications or qualities about myself that's helped move me up in my career has been that feeling about confidence that I have, confidence in my work, and expecting that people will have expectations of me, how they perceive me based on my disability. Because most of my career, I've been committed to the disability community, and this is the first time I've really worked in an office that doesn't have a disability focus. I used to teach special ed, deaf education, and I worked researching for the National Institute on Disability and Rehab. I did a lot of work in that field, and this job, when they interviewed me for it, they asked me how I would feel about working in a field that didn't involve disability. And I thought it would be great because I could bring my disability with me everywhere I go and use that as an opportunity, in fact, to expose other people to the disabilities in general, to deafness, and to how to communicate with people that have disabilities. And because people often forget about them, and not all people, of course, but I think to have a sense of humor about it and to be flexible has been really beneficial to me. That ability to work with people in different environments, to begin that comfortable relationship, has helped me thrive.
Okay. I'm Teresa Shea Boer. I work in the Office of the Chief Information Officer here at the NIH as a program analyst. I think that it's good getting to go towards the end because everyone else has said such great things. One of the things that's really helped me, though, is networking. I think that in my career, networking and not just looking at the job that I'm doing today, but getting to know other people, seeing what they're doing, getting to know the organization and people in other areas of government has been very beneficial. I like to look forward to what I'm going to be doing in 5 years. And by doing that, I can talk to other people, find out what other government positions are out there, what other interests I have, and forming those relationships. You never know what's going to happen in terms of employment. The other thing is to put yourself out there. I took a detail this past year down at the Federal Communications Commission, and that was through someone that I knew. They were trying to recruit me to go down there to work. And opportunities like that where you put yourself out there to try something new are always an opportunity for growth. I think that you can get very comfortable doing the same job over and over, but to put yourself in a challenging situation where you may not be comfortable gives you great opportunities to learn and grow as a person. And even if it's figuring out what you don't want to do, those are always just as valuable as doing the things that you are really good at, is figuring out where do I need to put some time and effort in to strengthen my resume, to strengthen my skill set.
Hello, and thank you for letting me come and be with you today. My name's Tim Wheelis. I'm the Executive Officer for the Institute on Deafness and Other Communication Disorders here at NIH, and I run the administration for the Institute. What helped me early in my career, now I guess I'm the old guy that's up here on the panel, so they were just starting to use email when I joined the government, and texting and stuff, and that was a great help. I recall I was in a different agency in Health and Human Services, and I recall that there was a deaf employee in our group. And one of the things that helped me, I was always very direct. Some of the comments that you heard today was to get out there and to put yourself out there personally and meet people. I went up to this gentleman because he seemed to always just be in his cubicle and didn't talk to many people. And I went up and I started talking to him, even though I knew from others that he was deaf. And but I didn't know whether or not he could hear it all, or if there was any other devices or something that he had there. So I just went in. And he couldn't, and he started writing down. He couldn't hear, and he started writing down, and so I started writing down, and I introduced myself to him. My point is, be careful about the technology, because he kept going back to the emails all the time, and that's how he would communicate. Even after I introduced myself to him, I hardly ever saw him unless I went to his cubicle and into his space. He rarely came out into kind of the public area, and so, but he would use the email all of the time. So he relied on it heavily, and I appreciated that. But I think at times he over relied on it, or he relied on that only. So I'm trying to give a little bit of a different perspective here, because I'm not deaf, I'm not hard of hearing, so I see it differently. As far as what helped me early in my career, one was having a great boss, a mentor early on in my career, and we'll talk, I think, more about mentors later. And then my second boss was a terrible boss. And I learned so much more from, I guess, that comparison of the differences on what it is to have and to work with a great supervisor, and to have and work with somebody who doesn't understand, doesn't want to understand, and is comfortable where they are in their career, and thinks, well, they're comfortable if everybody else is comfortable where they are.
Great. Thank you very much for your comments. Okay, so the second question I have this afternoon, and yeah, we do have one more question. One of the things that you hear mentioned often is about mentors and mentoring. So I'm wondering if any of you have had mentors that have helped you over the years. And if so, what kind of mentors? What kind of guidance or advice did they give you that you felt benefited you? And if you haven't had a mentor, did you ever wish that you could have had one? And what would you have wanted to learn from your mentor? Do you mind if you start, Tim?
No, thank you. So as I mentioned, my first boss was an informal mentor, and it was great because I could go to her and she would give me guidance. Who was important within the agency, things that I wanted to propose if I was overstepping my position and my bounds, or how to deal with something strategically. Since that time, I've been a mentor to a number of employees. I'm part of the mentoring program here at NIH, and I think it's one of the most critical things that you can have in your success in your career is to have a good mentor to help you navigate those waters.
I have also had the fortune of having a couple different mentors, both official and unofficial. I also want to mention something that's slightly different is a job coach. And where I think the difference between mentors and job coaches is mentors can give a lot of advice. Really talking things through, you tell them what's going on, they give you feedback. My experience and the difference that I've had with a job coach is that you're really doing the work. I come in with a problem and I talk through a problem. They may ask some questions, but it's up to me to come up with a solution. And it really, in my situation, I've had to do homework. There's been reading. There's been extra things associated with having a job coach. But both of them are critical. If I'm only relying on my experience, I'm not going to have that same input and same growth potential. When you partner with someone who has a wider experience, who has been working longer, knows the ins and outs of an organization, and has that extra time under their belt, you can learn so much. So both of those, I think, are equally important. They are different, but they both serve an amazing role in helping you develop your career and your career potential.
I agree with both of the points that they've made. And I've had experiences of official mentorship and then unofficial mentorship, and also job coaching as well. I will say that through the official leadership program that the Department of Education partners with OPM to do, they have a leadership program. So that helps people develop leadership skills and then transition into a supervisory role. And that's a great opportunity. But I think that I've learned the most from coaching, from a job coach. Because one thing that it's one thing to have somebody tell you what to do if they're not in your shoes, but if you have a problem or if you have something you need feedback on, that's not always something you want to hear, especially critical feedback. And the coach has really been helpful to get me to understand how to accept that kind of feedback and learn from it and grow from it. So I would say if you read the book Lean In, if you're familiar with that book, Lean In, one chapter in the book is called Are You My Mentor? And it's like kind of a children's book. It's like the children's book, Are You My Mother? And it says if you have to ask someone to be your mentor, then they're probably not your mentor. It should be more of an informal situation. And at least I feel that way. And I feel that's going to be the more valuable or beneficial situation. The book is called Lean In again. It was written by Sheryl Danberg. It's called Lean In, Sheryl Sandberg. She's the CEO of now Facebook, but used to be Yahoo. She talked about the glass ceiling being a leadership barrier for women. So it's a very good book for anybody who wants to read it. Very interesting comments in your response to the mentorship question. My experience has been different. I grew up in my career using formal mentors. I never used formal mentors. I never used job coaches. So your experiences are very interesting. But I agree with her comments about the informal mentorship opportunities. I've had a lot of informal mentors over the years. And when those opportunities come up, I always grab them because that's where you learn a lot. I had one mentor who I didn't expect to have, and just like Tim mentioned about emailing people too much, I've been told that I need to mitigate the amount of times I email people. And I type fast, and sometimes I get into writing wars. I write war and peace length novels, and I need to make my emails shorter and kind of more short and sweet. So some of my emails at HHS would be like 1 or 2 sentences. I just get the point across, and then I meet the person in person, and we have our discussion there face to face. So mentors have been a really valuable asset to me over the years. And it could be even like just tips they give me or something I learned from them. One thing a supervisor told me once, talking about networking, that's very important. People have to be able to develop relationships. So I went to a meeting where I disagreed with somebody at the meeting, and then I noticed another person joined in against me, and they kind of teamed up on me. And so, of course, that made me a little bit aggravated. But after the meeting, I went and talked to somebody about it and realized that those two are very close friends. And I couldn't, go against both of them when they're friends. So a mentor is somebody who can tell you more about personal relationships and those dynamics. And that can really impact your career. Because sometimes personal relationships are something you're not aware of or privy to in the workplace. And that's where mentorships can be a big benefit. Because if you're at a new agency or you're somewhere where you don't know people and the relationships going on in the workplace, somebody can kind of fill you in on those.
I have to agree with what everybody has said. I have one mentor that I worship. I love this man. I mean, this man has top honors from me. And he's the one that really just threw me to the wolves. He didn't hold my hand. He just, pushed me off the cliff, and I had to fly. And because of that, I learned through some of the tough experiences that I had. And you may be wondering, it was before I accepted this new job. I think it was, and I thought, this is about energy and fuel and all this stuff. This is all new to me. I've never had any job in this field. I've always been in financial policy. And at the time, I hadn't quite started that job, but that my new boss stopped by my house with stacks and stacks of of books and information and all kinds of information to help prepare me for my first day on the job. And I thought at first, are you serious? Is this appropriate for you to come by my house? But over the years, when I look back, I realize how much I appreciated that he made that effort to, and encourage me, read this, learn as much as you can. He used to work on Wall Street, this guy, as an energy broker, on the floor. And so he was just a brilliant man. And he taught me so much about how to understand how the business works. And his sense of humor, his honesty, his directness, all of that, I picked up on that. It was all very valuable to me. I think at one point there was a position that I thought I could get. I was very confident about it, and in the end I didn't get the job. And I was kind of stumped, and I felt really let down about it. And, sometimes you start thinking, what did I do wrong? What was it about me? And that's normal. It might be a little bit of an overreaction. But I went to him. I went to my mentor. And he had already long left the agency, but I went to him and had talked to him about the situation and told him I was feeling a little insecure, and I was wondering if it may have had something to do with the interpreter. And I know, it's sad but true, but that's always in the back of your mind as a deaf person, in your subconscious. You're always wondering, was it me? Was it the interpreter? Was my information, my knowledge conveyed? And he said to me point blank, he said, stop thinking that way. Stop with that insecurity. I just had to stop thinking that way. And he was the kind of man that made me realize that just go on from here, that just stop thinking that way. And we're still in touch, and as our families experience things, we still keep in touch with one another. So if you have a mentor or you have the capability of getting one, I encourage that. It'll be very beneficial to you. You guys have all had some wonderful, interesting stories. I've learned a lot from each of you. I work for a private company, again, not for a federal agency, but we are a government contractor, basically, on a lot of different federal agencies, and I support FDA and HHS most of the time. And at my company, we have a mentor every year. It's a part of our personal development plan to identify good, compatible people to work with, and we work with them over the course of a year. And I've always enjoyed the different experiences that I have with each of them. First of all, because I learn a lot, and you always have different relationships with one, and then another, compared to the peers and the people that you work with and your boss. Sometimes, again, your boss may be an informal mentor, but you have to be more careful about how you approach things with your boss. But usually with your mentor, you're not on their team. It's somebody that you can be open with, and you can ask any kind of questions, seek any kind of advice. My very first mentor did happen to be my boss, who was a CODA, a child with deaf parents, and it was when I had just started at Booz Allen Hamilton, and I had a lot of questions, a lot of things that I didn't know. It was my first job, my first time working in the corporate world, a lot of new situations that I was coming across every day, so it was full of questions, and my boss was just wonderful. When I changed projects and met new people, I could still go back to that person. And some of the mentors that I had were peers of mine. Some were supervisory, were above me. But you're looking for somebody to teach you new skills in your field or mentor you to learn something different. For example, I work a lot with the government. One thing that we have to be very serious about and very careful with is complying with all of the different federal regulations. And we have trainings upon trainings about all the different federal regulations, but there are always new situations that arise, and we have to make sure that we stay ethical and that we're always in compliance and in doing the right things with our work. And we have to, often I will debrief with mentors and get feedback and make sure that we're on the right track and make sure that we're doing the right thing at work. And I would say by my third, fourth, maybe fifth year, I enjoyed it so much that I then applied to become a mentor for other people. We have several deaf employees that have joined Booz Allen recently, and I am some mentors to folks officially, some unofficially, but I do mentor some new employees when they come to the company. And basically, you're just available to answer their questions, take them out to lunch, chat with them, help them out, help them feel comfortable with the company culture, learn about the company. And most of the time, you eventually become friends with them and you develop a great relationship. I have great memories about my former mentors, and I'm in touch with most of them, and I think it's great for networking as well. Some of my former mentors have left the company, but I'm still in touch with them. You never know, in the future you may need a new job or a new opportunity. So keeping in touch with these folks is a great way to network.
Great. Thank you very much, all of you, for your wonderful comments and viewpoints. You know, most of the time, people are usually happy to talk about an older coworker or a more senior coworker, giving them the opportunity to take them out to lunch and ask questions. But if they won't answer, then they're probably not a good mentor. Somebody who'd answered is going to develop a better relationship and be able to help you in the long run. And that's how you can start long-term relationships. Okay, so that's the questions I have. I want to turn it over to the floor now and allow the folks in the audience to ask questions. So the interpreter will mirror the questions. Yeah, do you mind?
So it's been emphasized that you have face-to-face conversations. And I'm wondering if there are any improvements, because I don't have that opportunity. I can't really get the face-to-face. I'm wondering if, what should I do? Should I go to the director?
So I think that was me that said that. I think all of us, myself included, we have our own fears about meeting new people. All of us do. And there's something about going to somebody and having that opportunity to say, you know, hello, I'm Tim. You know, so to kind of break down that barrier. And I don't think we can minimalize that. If you don't have that opportunity, lean in. Find that opportunity. If you don't have that opportunity with your boss, find that opportunity with your coworkers. If you're not finding that opportunity because you have other restrictions, find other ways, different tools, but find the opportunity. And if they don't come to you, go to them. Break the ice. Does that answer the question?
I'm wondering if it will affect my performance rate, like performance rating.
You know, I can't speak for your supervisor. I don't know your exact situation. When I came to the Deafness Institute, I had no real experience other than having, met and been friends with maybe a few coworkers who were deaf or hard of hearing. The ones that seem to, I want to be careful how I say this, but did better overall in the office environment were the ones who put forth the extra effort. I think that correlates to doing the job, because if you put forth the extra effort, John Sloan was talking about some of the things about answering the question, getting to the issue, who, what, when, where, how. I think that's critical. I think that you have to put yourself out there, and I do think that affects your performance.
Yeah. Like I've mentioned before, how I've moved up in my career has been by being aggressive. I'm always happy to ask questions. The worst a person can say is no, or that they're too busy. And if you ask a question, you can always follow it up with, well, when can we meet to talk about it? And I have an open door policy, and I hope your managers or your team leads have that too, have a similar policy. And if they do, take advantage of it. Be aggressive and ask questions. Break the ice too. If you break the ice initially, the rest should be easy.
I'd like to add a comment too. Basically, don't be afraid. Life is short. Don't be shy. Go up and meet. If you haven't formally introduced yourself, you said you hadn't met the director yet, you want to meet the director? The director's new? Oh, you're new here?
He's a new director, and communication is more social, but he doesn't communicate much with me.
Okay, but if you feel nervous, or you're obsessing or thinking about things that happened in the past, you're obsessing on things that have happened before, and carrying that onto your behavior now, you're going to feel more burdened with that. If you just let that go, close the chapter on that book, start a new one and be assertive and make the effort. Make a new start. And if you don't feel like you can, then maybe discipline yourself. Find another opportunity. Maybe if there's no communication, it could mean that they are accustomed to that environment, that style now, because that's what's been there all along. And if you're new there, you don't have to continue to let that happen. I think it's dangerous to become too complacent and just kind of decide like, okay, well, this is how things go, and not to stir up some change. It's get involved. And again, get engaged. That's a key word. It's a powerful word for us. Engagement. Get yourself involved.
And I think that the key to remember here is that we're all experts in dealing with with hearing people. So it's a responsibility that we carry. It's our responsibility to step up and make sure that we make them comfortable too, and make them comfortable to communicate with us. So it's on us to break the ice. Somebody else have a question for the panel?
Talking about branding, can you guys see me okay?
We're having trouble seeing you. Maybe.
Branding. I'd like to talk about branding. Branding yourself. If there's a job opening and you know a good person to come and work with you or work for you, you might know that through your mentorship or through your networking, spreading the word. If they are positive about you, or I want to know what your experience is regarding that. If you had any experience where they've said, "Oh, hey, I know a guy. This guy could come and do that. Can come and do that job," where there's been an opening.
I'd like to comment about the Washington Post article recently. It talked about job postings. So the USA job posting site, apparently about 79% of the people that look for jobs on that website already have someone in mind. So by the time you post, it might be a little bit too late. So it seems like you need to be getting your foot in the door at some point earlier in the game. You need to be even more aggressive to be considered for that position. And that percentage is a disappointing statistic, so I hope that the government can change that in the future. I agree. To get your foot in the door at the Department of Education like I did, the job was a research job, and I had some experience, but I didn't necessarily feel like I was the best fit. But I got in, I pressed the right people, and I was put to where I wanted to go. So John is right. Unfortunately, a lot of jobs are intended for a specific one person. But if you make a good, solid impression on people, and you show them that you work hard and that you're good at working with people and you try, they'll remember that. And the job I have currently, I was recruited for. It wasn't because of a posting. They remembered me from when I worked for them before, and that I was a good fit for it. So he's right, that happens.
I'd like to add, your question is a good question. I just had a conversation about that with my mentor a couple weeks ago about being the subject matter expert at Booz Allen Hamilton. Oftentimes when people are discussing a specific field or about requirements or testing or using very specific technological tools, when they're advertising for those kind of positions, they already know who the experts are in those fields. And how do they become well known? They volunteer their time. They may come in and start at the ground level, but eventually over time they may hear about a proposal coming up. They volunteer to offer their help. They hear about testing that needs to be done. They offer to participate. And people will see you more and more as you volunteer in different projects or different areas. That's how your name becomes more well known, and that leads you to new projects that come up down the line. When they know they need an expert in this technology or with testing, they'll know you as a subject matter expert. So it's important, in order for you to be well known, that you put yourself out there.
I'd also like to add that there are lots of government groups and other resources available to government employees. So getting involved in different areas, whether it's federally employed women or blacks in government, there are lots of other groups that you can branch out to. All of those things are going to help you meet other people, again, to network, but also to have that experience interacting with different groups. As a blind person, people are always going to notice that I'm blind. As a deaf person, people notice that you're deaf. And even though some days it's easier to tell the story and to explain to everyone what the best way to communicate is or how they can help, some days, we have to be those people, and we have to teach others how to interact with us. We also have to teach others how we are as professionals, and putting ourselves out there, it's not always the easiest thing, but it does make a huge difference. It makes a huge difference with people that you meet. They'll remember that, and the more welcoming you are, that impression does last.
I do want to add one more thing to that. You should volunteer for groups within your organization, your agency, even if it's just for like the CFC or something. Do something to help plan the fundraising, something simple like that. Getting involved with any kind of volunteer work or opportunity, and not just doing networking, but giving an opportunity for other people to see your work in a different way, not just the position you work in, but your other skills as well. So I recommend that. Tim, did you want to add something?
Just a quick comment to add on that. Volunteer and then be active. Play a role. Don't just be part of a committee. I see people, I run committees all the time. I see people on the committees that don't actively participate. And I remember who those people are, but more important is I remember the people that actively participate. And when we're talking about networking, people come to me all the time asking me about people, and I'm going to put forward the names of the people who actively participate. My concern is somebody who has a hearing disability, a hearing issue, and they're also an introvert, and getting those folks who are uncomfortable putting themselves out there, that have to take that extra effort and do that if that's where they want to go in their career. If they want to move up and move forward in their career, you have to do that. And some of the employees that I have that have a variety of disabilities, issues, concerns, most of the ones that I've hired, it's because somebody has been impressed with their performance and put their names to me. It matters.
Okay, next question from the audience. Over here.
So mine is about email. I've got 2 questions regarding that. I call it email abuse, for lack of a better word. Sometimes a supervisor will say, "Oh, you're deaf. Oh, we'll just communicate via email." And they think it's no big deal. But it's really not effective. I want that face-to-face, that personal contact is better as far as communication goes, rather than relying on email, which can often lead to misunderstandings, and you can't read the face, the facial communication, the nonverbal communication. So that's one concern. My other point is, if a supervisor communicates something via email, and some people will respond, no comment, no comment, no comment, and I'm opening all of these that say no comment, no comment, no comment, no comment. I mean, again, that type of communication, it's very time consuming, and I think people should maybe reply only if you have something to say. If you don't have something to say, you don't need to respond and say no comment. I'm just curious what your thoughts are regarding email as a communication method.
I can comment. That's an interesting that you brought up emails. I don't know if you've heard the term nonverbal communication. I'm sorry, verbal communication versus nonverbal communication. What some people don't realize is that there's a lot of things going on in nonverbal communication. In a person-to-person interaction, when you meet someone face-to-face, the message they're saying may not coincide with the message they're giving you by their facial expressions or body language. And an email it's not an always effective way to communicate. And it really depends on the context of the situation. What's the reason behind sending the email? I'll admit, I like to email sometimes because I'm lazy and I don't have the time to schedule a meeting for my team. So I'll just email them whatever message I need them to know. And I'll just ask them for specific information because I think that's just faster, especially when I know they have the answer. So email is a tool, but it's not always the only tool for communication.
Is that better? Okay. I would also say that if you want those face-to-face meetings, you need to be your own advocate and say that to your boss. They may be under the assumption that it's easier or preferable for you to communicate by email, but you need to say, no, that's not how I want to always communicate. For some things that's okay, but when we do one-on-ones, I want to have that face-to-face. I need that face-to-face too. Helping them to understand why that's important is critical. Your other point about responding, no comment, no comment, no comment, yes, I agree that can be very annoying. The flip side of that is when you send out an email, you're asking for feedback, and you get nothing. It is, did people receive this, or do they not have feedback? Did they not understand it? It opens up and leaves a lot of empty or open-ended questions in my mind when something like that happens. So even though no comment is annoying or can be annoying, it does help to really tie and wrap up whatever the question was.
Did you want to add something, Sasha?
Yeah, I'd like to add. Personally, I love email. I could email all day long. If it was up to me, I could do my job all day long over email. However, I've learned that using email depends on who the other person is that you're communicating with. That other person may not be great at reading or may not understand written communication or any number of things. I have a client currently, she is a great verbal communicator. She is awesome at leading meetings and public speaking, but email is not her forte. She doesn't read well. She doesn't write well. She gets overwhelmed with the number of emails that she gets. And knowing her, it's worthless for me to try to communicate with her over email. If I need to communicate with her, I'll meet her in person. Fortunately, she's a great lip reader, and we can communicate well. And then again, there are other people that I can't lip read at all. It's a waste of my time. I may try to go to them, and that's ineffective. So I will email those people. You've got folks where written communication is better back and forth. So you just have to know what communication methods are effective with what people, and it's important to kind of sort that out. The other thing is be mindful of how you email people. What certain things that you want to avoid when you start a conversation, and it's going to go back and forth, back and forth. I mean, are you going to exchange multiple emails all day long just to answer one simple question? So be mindful of how you communicate, what you're saying. Is that effective? If a verbal, meeting is better, then make an arrangement to do that. Is the person sitting here in your office? Go talk to them. If not, if they're remotely, give them a call. But email may not be the most effective because of the needs of that other person. So you have to remember that.
I do want to add one short comment. I've become the supervisor for my team now, and I've learned very quickly that their communication preference varies depending on the person. And I know mine, but I don't always know theirs. And so we had one meeting where I had to ask each and every one of them to be on the table and to do a strength deployment inventory for the Myers-Briggs test, where you test your personality preferences and the way that you communicate. And all of them had different colors. So we did that test where I could learn about them. Like, I was a red person. I'm a visualization person. I have ideas. And so when I type emails, they're long and they're all over the place. And it really takes me a long time to type an email. But when I do it right. So I send long emails. And then my team doesn't really understand what the point is that I'm talking about. And so I called a meeting right after I sent an email, and I called a meeting with everybody, and I said, it probably will take you 10 minutes to read this, and then let's convene so we can talk about it. And I want to talk about all the steps I'm talking about in the email. And like they've all said, we really have to kind of meet people halfway, figure out what their preferences are, and that will help make our lives easier in the long run. Especially if we don't think about just emails as somebody wanting to avoid confrontation or avoid communication, or if people misread tone in an email, if they're very direct emails, people can misinterpret them. And then you have to have a 2-hour conversation about how some people sign just thanks, period, and that's passive aggressive to someone, and it should be thanks, exclamation point. And that's something people read into, and then it can get very socially complicated. So you need to tell people up front what your preference is, and then ask what theirs is. One thing I want to suggest for the audience, make time with your boss, maybe 30 minutes to have a meeting, get an interpreter with or without an interpreter, maybe you can lip read, I don't know, but set up boundaries and expectations. And so certain topics are okay to email about, but for personal development or for a personal development plan, you want that to happen in face-to-face conversations. So that's a suggestion I have. Set those boundaries early on. We have one question here. Yep, go ahead.
I have a couple questions actually, but I'll try to narrow it down here. So my first question is teleworking, regarding teleworking. I telework 3 days a week. And if I want to volunteer to help mentor or teach or train a class, that's a bit of a challenge because I love teleworking, I have to tell you. I don't want to give that up. I love my telework days. So that presents a challenge. How would you deal with that? Do I just have to basically tough it out and go to work, or can I find some other ways to volunteer?
Oh, I guess I can answer the question. I have something to say. For telework, maybe I'm being a little bit too forward about myself, but I would rather people come to the office. I like when people come to the office because I can assign them more work, more than I can when they're teleworking. People that telework often may not get the best assignments or the most fun assignments. So,
okay,
yeah.
Thanks.
And really it depends on the supervisor. Everybody's different. I'm wondering, in terms of his question, how do you make face-to-face communication or that relationship with a person during their telework days during the week? How do you maintain the relationship? I guess when they come to the office you do. Is that when you take all the opportunity you can? Yeah, honestly, for me, that's what I do. My staff has mandatory one-on-one meetings with me every week. And I emphasize that one-on-one meeting is not my meeting, it's their meeting. That's their opportunity to take the time to ask me questions. And that's how I maintain the face-to-face relationship with my team. I don't know about the rest of you, but that's what I do.
Can I add a follow-up? Oh, one more question. I've noticed a pattern, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I work in the Baltimore area, Baltimore, Maryland, and I've noticed that a lot of opportunities in D.C. seem to have faster growth potential, maybe Virginia, D.C., the metro Washington area here, much faster opportunity to move your way up the career ladder. People are jumping up to 14s and 15s pretty easily there, while up in Baltimore, where I am, it seems that there's a very different attitude there. It's pretty challenging to get a promotion and get beyond even just a 13. And I'm just wondering, do you think that's a cultural thing? I don't know.
I think because it's headquarters here, so that's typically, there's more availability in general here, more vacancies, and they focus on the high grade levels here more. There's just more of them available here than in Baltimore. So I don't think it's a cultural thing. I think it's just, it's really just a locality issue. Logistics issue, I think.
I want to go back to if you're teleworking 3 days a week, then you've got to find that time if you're going to mentor and use those 2 days when you're in the office to have some face-to-face communication. We're also using some of the video chats, the link and GoToMeeting and those types of things to do visual communications as well. So that might be an option, but it depends on the culture of the organization. I agree that when you're downtown, there's more opportunities and there's also more competition. So that drives the grades up a little bit as well. And once you go out to Baltimore or out to a region or somewhere else, there's not that same level of competition. So I think it is partly culture, but I think it's also driven by the level of competition to some degree.
I do want to add, oh, sorry, go ahead, Sasha.
I'll add another thought there. I don't telework because my current project does not allow me to. I have to see my client every day. But in your situation, I would recommend, let's say, you said you telework 3 days from home, 2 days you're in the office. I would make sure that those 2 days that I'm in the office, I make myself as visible as possible. Meet with as many people I can, and you have to plan for it. If you know there are certain people that you want to show your face to, schedule a meeting with them in advance. If you know that they're in the office, Thursday, Friday, and Monday, make appointments to see these folks when you're in the office, so that when you get to the office, you may have a full day of meeting with people. Don't wait till you get there and then check in and say, hey, you got some time? Can we grab some time today? Make those plans in advance and meet with as many people as you can. I appreciate that. That's a good suggestion. However, sometimes, again, specifically at my branch chief, he teleworks too, and it is tricky to coordinate schedules. He's in the office maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'm in the office Monday, Friday. We've got completely opposite schedules, so we're missing each other. But the only way that we can connect is maybe through a video phone or the video or email. But it's not as optimal as one-on-one or face-to-face. If that person is critical to your career, and you got to make sure that, I don't know, maybe once a week, twice a week, you have some face-to-face time with them. It's important to have that physical connection. And if you telework different days, I get it, but try, once every couple weeks even, or once a month.
And one more thing I just thought of. In my unit, we've talked about addressing the telework issue. Some people want to do it every day. And then have one day a month where they show up to work. And so that would mean that they'd be at home teleworking every day except one. And that's now currently in the works where I work. So it would be even harder at that point to get that face-to-face time with my peers and my colleagues.
The problem is, though, that's happening everywhere. It's truly happening in other agencies.
I just would like to see more creativity and ideas of how to mitigate that. One last question here in the back.
I wanted to address his question up front, the gentleman up in the front who just asked. I'd like to answer your question. One way to schedule that time is, if you have an Outlook calendar, you can ask your supervisor to share their calendar, and you can sync it with yours. You can have access to both calendars and see when you're both available. That's one option. And then, that's one good way to set up a meeting with somebody, is by sharing their Outlook calendar.
You're right. I don't have a question. I just have I'll just stand up. I telework also myself, and my new branch, everybody there is willing to use Link, that system, the video conferencing system, and a lot of people are still kind of getting used to the technology, but they're willing to try it at the very least. And so far it's worked, and I've really appreciated it, enjoyed it, because I have my VP, my video phone, and I have my laptop with Link that I can teleconference with my coworkers, and then I can call into conferences at the call-in line using an interpreter through VRS. And so I can see on both screens both my colleagues and my interpreter, and so including my supervisor. And it takes a little bit of training to figure out how to manage all the technology and all the issues that could come up, but I've really enjoyed it in using those different options. And it's made the face-to-face meetings much smoother for me and them as well, because we can actually see each other. Okay, all right. So I think it's 5 o'clock. I think we've had a long day. We should probably wrap up.
Time for a beer.
But I want to thank all the panel members today for participating. Ryan's going to wrap up for the rest of the day.
All right, thank you all so much for coming here. I want to remind everybody that we are having a meet and greet event at the Barking Dog in Bethesda. The address is 4723 Elm Street. So it's on the red line. There is a metro stop, and there is also parking nearby. I think it's 80 cents for an hour. So thank you. Have a good night. Thank you again, panelists.